The following is a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. It's your midweek fix for racing news and information. Brought to you by the Championship Racing Network. Now let's head trackside to join your hosts, Steve West and Matt Nicholson.
Welcome into the latest edition of Crossed Flags here, as we're doing this actually a little bit early. Usually we record it on Wednesdays. Hey, needed to do it on a Tuesday this week. Nothing wrong with that, right? And this week it's all about, as you can see right here on the bottom of the screen, rumors and penalties regarding Formula One. Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff that went on in NASCAR, we could talk about it. The attempt at the triple, which didn't quite happen for Kyle Larson. We could talk a little bit about what happened on Saturday in the Xfinity Series race, but really the biggest news we think is coming from F1 this week, and that's why we wanted to address it. And let's start with the rumor part of it, because we've been hearing a lot of this. We addressed this a little bit in the big show last weekend, Matt, in talking about how Red Bull, sometimes they got a really, really quick trigger finger. You know, I asked Nick DeVries about that and some of the other drivers that have been out there and have run for Red Bull in the past. And they've been in a situation where they really, sometimes they don't think about it. And certainly in the case of Nick DeVries, I don't think they got a fair shot. And now we got this heralded rookie, Liam Lawson, coming in, who has stumbled out of the gate, hasn't scored a championship point yet. And we're only 2 races into the season. We've only run Australia and China, and we're already hearing rumors that Red Bull's thinking about making a switch. I mean, you want to talk about ridiculously fast.
It's hard for me to wrap my mind around it, of why they would try to even think about this 2 races in to a brand new season, and he's in the same, within the same organization umbrella. Granted, he's with a different team. But why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Red Bull slipped from the Constructors' Cup Championship last year, mainly because Max Verstappen was pulling all the weight. Sergio Perez was not quite performing well. I say quite. He wasn't performing anywhere near how well Max Verstappen was. And so with a year left on his contract, they decided mutually to split ways, as the old phrase goes. And they're bringing this kid, Liam Lawson. Here's the thing about it. Liam Lawson is a kid. Okay? And I don't care how heralded you want to talk about these drivers being. We're talking about him being one of 7, if I remember right, rookies this year. And he's coming in with an enormous amount of pressure on him. And some drivers can handle that pressure. Other drivers can't. And I'm not saying that Liam can't, but so far he hasn't been able to. So here's the thing. They at least gave Nick DeVries a half a year. And they gave him a half a year under what we're now calling Racing Bulls, which is by far the inferior of the 2 teams. You put him right into the fire, and you're going to try and compare him to Max Verstappen, who's a 4-time defending champion? I think that's a little bit unfair.
That's extremely unfair. My personal opinion, Helmut Marko needs to stay in the office and stay out of the racetrack and let Christian Horner run the business at the racetrack. Because
he's been doing a pretty good job.
He's chirping a little bit too much and getting inside of Christian's head, and it's putting Christian in a position to where he's got to either do or die. And Christian's not going to die. But Helmut Marko is nothing but an advisor.
I agree, but in his position there, technically he is sitting up above Christian Horner. I mean, to a certain extent, doesn't Christian Horner have to kind of at least pay some attention to what Helmut Marko says?
Helmut Marko needs to focus on the office and let Christian Horner focus on the racetrack.
I don't disagree with that. Don't get me wrong. I don't disagree with that. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. This is just literally, it's Tuesday, as we said at the beginning of the show, as we are recording this. So we don't know yet. They're off this weekend before they go to Japan. So Will a decision be made before Japan? Is this going to be a race to race thing until either one of two things happens? Either Liam Lawson is switched, and the driver they're talking about switching him with is Yuki Tsunoda, by the way. So we're basically going to be following this until one of two things happens. They make the switch with Yuki Tsunoda, or they state Liam Lawson's in the Red Bull car, period.
They need to give this season time to develop.
I agree.
I mean, you can't make a hair trigger judgment on 2 races.
Yeah.
You can't.
We're only, 6 races into the Cup Series season? I'm not even sure you can make a snap judgment based on that, much less 2.
No.
So, yeah, this is much too quick, and then all these people that are talking about these rumors, stop it. Let the kid get there, let the kid find his legs, and let him get them under him. That's the key. That's the important part. You know, I think really, truth be told, what Mercedes did with Kimi Antonelli, they said, hey, listen, we don't really feel like you've got that much pressure. You come in, you do what you do. You've got the car, you've got the seat, it's yours. There's no pressure. And I think that honestly allowed him to score points in the first couple of rounds. We know that the car is good enough. Mercedes has been top 2, top 3 in the Constructors' Cup the last several years. We know that the Red Bull cars are good. Max Verstappen's proven that, and so is Sergio Perez. You know, even though he's been overshadowed by Max Verstappen, that car is a good car, and he has won races with that. Liam Lawson just needs to get his legs under him.
Right.
All right.
He does.
The other cars that are generally good are Ferrari. In the last couple of years, we've been talking about how it seems to be Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, and then last year we saw a nice jump back up to the top by McLaren. So now it's kind of a 4-horse race, if you want to put it that way. But man, did Ferrari put themselves into a big, big hole here. For the first time, and remember this now, Formula One is celebrating 75 years this year, 75th anniversary. And Ferrari has run at least one race in every single one of those 75 years. And for the first time in the history of Formula One, both of their cars got disqualified in the same race. Now, not for the same reason. One car was underweight by 1 kilogram, which is approximately 2.2 pounds. The other car was had a skid. They got skid plates underneath of them, which F1 mandates specifically to look a certain way so that one team is not trying to gain an advantage aerodynamically over another. And over the course of time, these cars sit so low, they hit that curbing, which is raised up, and it'll scrape it off. And I honestly think that's exactly what happened here, but it scraped too much of it off, and that plate is just a little bit too thin. That was the one that was on Lewis Hamilton's car. And because one car was underweight by 2.2 pounds, the other car had a skid plate that was too thin, both cars got disqualified. The third car that got disqualified was the Alpine of Pierre Gasly. It was underweight exactly like Charles Leclerc's Ferrari was. And I've got the report here from Formula One in stating that following the FIA post-race scrutineering, both our cars, this is the statement from Ferrari, I take that back, both our cars were found not to conform to the regulations. They said that Leclerc's car, and as it turns out, Pierre Gasly's car, when they got done with the race, they hit right on the number of how heavy those cars could be. And that's 800 kilograms, so a little over 1,700 pounds. We'll fully detail that during the big show. When they drained the fuel out, that's when it became too light.
Naturally, when you take weight off of something, it's going to be lighter. What it was is the tolerances weren't allowed for. The burn-off tolerances. That's exactly what the problem was. And when you miss those burn-off tolerances, that's going to cause an underweight issue when you cross the scales.
So is this a situation where F1 or Ferrari messed up, or is this F1 being too strict?
It's 50-50.
Okay.
It's 50-50 in my opinion.
Because here's the thing, all these teams, they know these rules. And Ferrari should know them more than anyone, let's be real honest. If you know that what they're going to do is drain the fuel out, then dry, empty fuel tank, you should know that your car is 800 kilos. Somewhere down the line, they messed up. And that's kind of the way that I look at it, because what else might have happened over the course of the race that might have put them in a situation where when they drained it out, it ends up being less than what it was at the start of the race. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's the way this weight stuff is with that. It's too much nitpick.
Okay.
Way too much nitpick. There needs to be a base dry weight. A dry weight is what it's called.
Sure. No fluids.
No, yeah, dry weight, no fluids. Okay. That's what it needs to be, a base dry weight, period. And know what your mark is.
From everything that it sounds like, though, Ferrari, at least in the case of Charles Leclerc, is not seemingly willing to appeal. From the way that you're talking about it, maybe there's a little bit of wiggle room and maybe you could appeal it. But Ferrari doesn't sound like that they're going to appeal this on the behalf of Charles Leclerc.
Because it holds no water, because that's a flat out miss.
Okay. So it's too clear of a miss for you to say, okay, even though you think that there should be a little bit of wiggle room here, you don't feel like there's enough wiggle room that the FIA or Formula One would allow it.
No.
Okay. And that brings us to Lewis Hamilton's situation. Remember, both of these guys scored top 10s. And they had top 10s taken away from Pierre Gasly's disqualification, dropped him from 11th to 20th. So it makes no difference in points whatsoever. But for the two Ferraris, they finished inside the top 10. This takes away not a humongous chunk, because they were, 7th and 8th, I think it was?
6th and 9th.
Okay, my bad. They were 6th and 9th. It's not like it took away a huge chunk of points. It's not like they took away 1st and 2nd, like McLaren finished. But at the same time, when you have a McLaren finishing 1st and 2nd, and you did finish with both cars inside the top 10, that is not a not insignificant thing, because all those points add up throughout the course of the season. So as we look at the situation with Lewis Hamilton, that little skid plate that we were talking about and how it wears off over the course of time, I didn't hear of any other driver having that problem. Is this the line that Lewis Hamilton is taking, or is it the setup that Ferrari had in combination with the line that Lewis was taking, or is it all the setup?
It's a setup problem.
Okay.
Because if you've got a car riding too low and you know you've got that skid block and you've got a wear tolerance on that skid block, you got to compensate to the plus side to where you don't flirt with that tolerance too much.
Yeah, because all of these drivers are using these curbs to a certain extent. Every single one of them is. And it just so happens that the line that Lewis Hamilton preferred, I guess, happened to wear on that skid plate more than it did even in his teammate Charles Leclerc's car.
Yeah.
Okay. No room for appeal on that one either?
Probably not.
Okay.
Because the tolerances are there, and if you've got a car riding too low and that car's hitting that skid plate,
Yeah, and I asked this question because there is an equivalent here. We've seen a few penalties so far this year, for example, in the Cup Series, and we saw the big one for Chase Briscoe real early, where they docked him 100 points and all the other stuff that they docked him. And they went out and they appealed it, and they brought all that evidence that they brought for Joe Gibbs Racing on that 19 car related to that rear spoiler. And the appeals panel sided with Joe Gibbs Racing and gave him the points back and got rid of the suspensions and got rid of the fine and all that kind of stuff. But that's a rarity these days. Usually when it comes to NASCAR, and we've seen a number of owners, not the least of which Tony Stewart, when he was an owner in NASCAR, state, we really don't see much of a point in appealing these penalties, because by and large, you're not going to win it. Same situation in Formula One with the FIA. You can try to appeal it, but by and large, you're probably going to be going and beating your head up against a brick wall.
Pretty much.
And there's the unfortunate side of it. So regardless of whether we think that there should be some wiggle room there, there's not. The rules are rules, black and white situation, and that's the way that it goes. So the good news for some of the other teams, like a Haas F1, who did have both of their drivers inside the top 10, they now suddenly have a top 5 finish out of Esteban Ocon, and their heralded rookie, Ollie Behrman, jumps up a couple of spots as well. And suddenly Haas F1 becomes a player after having a horrible season opener in Australia. Now, it is early in the year. A lot of movement can happen, and this could be IndyCar, this could be Cup Series, this could, obviously we're talking about Formula One. A lot of movement here, but as you look at what we've seen out of the first couple of races, and I've only seen highlights because I'll be honest with you, it's way past my bedtime, and I'm not getting up at 2:00 in the morning to watch China live. But from the highlights that we've seen and from the news reports that we've seen, McLaren certainly seems to have picked up right where they left off. Is there a surprise to you in the early goings of Formula One this year after 2 races? Or is this pretty much what you were thinking it was going to do?
Pretty much what I was thinking.
Okay. I got to admit, I'm a little bit surprised that Sauber got off the mat as quick as they did.
Yeah, but from the big standpoints of everything, I'm really not surprised. It was pretty. I felt it was going to be status quo starting this year the way last year ended.
And since I'm on that subject, let me ask this question because, I mean, the car for 2025 is a little different from the car from 2024. Across the board, all 10 teams. Is it the car that is significantly different enough, or is it the fact that Nico Hülkenberg came in, and we saw Nico Hülkenberg, he was basically the guy pulling all the weight at Haas F1 last year. Is it Nico Hülkenberg that actually kind of helped Sauber and pulled them across to get points? In other words, kind of like that situation of the 21 car when they switched from Harrison Burton to Josh Berry. Was it the car? Was it the driver? We figured out it wasn't the car. It was the driver. So we asked the question when it comes to Kick Sauber. Was it the cars? Was it the drivers?
I think it's more of a personnel issue because you remember they got Mattia Binotto over there too.
Mm-hmm. And he started to make some pretty big changes too.
So I think it's more of a personnel problem. I don't think they had a car problem.
Okay. So it's the atmosphere, I guess you could call it, within the building over at Sauber. It has changed enough with the driver change because both drivers are switched from 2024 to 2025, and you got a new team boss, and it's just changing the whole attitude of the team.
That will do wonders.
Okay. And in this case, it has done it for the better. Kind of saw it last year when it came to Haas F1 when, we all love to talk about Gunther Steiner, and he's a great personality, and he certainly shows it in things like F1 Drive to Survive, but maybe he'd just been there for too long, and the switch over to Io Komatsu was that big of a difference for Haas F1?
I'm sure.
Okay.
And then now you got different driver personnel in, complete total culture change.
Yeah. Okay. It's going to be fun to watch. There's no doubt about it. And like I said, F1's off this weekend, and then they'll go to Japan, and that'll wrap up their early year Asian swing. That's when they start to make their way back, going west over to Europe. So we'll be talking about all that. We will be talking about Kyle Larson's attempt at doing something only Kyle Busch has done, which is to enter and win all 3 races in a weekend. Yes, he fell short. We'll talk about why coming up on Saturday, and we'll talk about so much more. Again, it's early in the week. I'm sure there's going to be a whole heck of a lot more to talk about before we get all said and done. And we'll have it all for you Saturday morning starting at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time on CRN Live on YouTube, which is right down there, that little subscribe button. Or if you're on Jocks TV, right down there, that little subscribe button. Both of us love to see those subscription numbers go up. We appreciate all the help that you can get. And if you've already subscribed, by all means, tell your friends, tell your neighbors' friends, tell your friends' neighbors. Just tell it to everybody. We appreciate the support. We'll talk to you again Saturday morning, again, 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central Time. On behalf of Matt Nicholson, producer John, producer Molly, I'm Steve West. Thank you for checking out this edition of Crossed Flags.
You've been listening to Crossed Flags, a racing podcast. For more content like this, Subscribe to CRN Live on YouTube, and you'll be set to catch the 2-hour live show every Saturday morning at 9 Eastern, 8 Central.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.